So, Matt, I didn't tell you about this because I wanted to wait to get your reaction, but for like the last 2 or 3 days here in Grand Prairie, there's been like swarms of flying insects, like huge, massive, like, you know, how you see locust swarms come in. I mean, they're giant swarms of flying insects that have been like terrorizing the town. It got so bad that the mayor had to call out the SWAT team.
Yeah.
Good.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how you doing tonight, brother?
Hey, I'm good, brother. I'm good.
You like my SWAT team joke?
Yeah, that was a good one. I like
whole new meaning. So before we get into it, we want to say go check out the Podbelly Network at podbelly.com. You can find a list of shows that we're happy to be associated with, and you can find some tips and tricks on podcasting if you're into such a thing. Also, go over and check out any of our recent sponsors that we've had. We don't have a sponsor on this episode, but we have had them recently, so go check them out. In our show notes, you will find the link to use our code and our code. So go get you something neat for somebody for a just because, or go get something for yourself. You'll appreciate it, and it will help out the show. Also, go over to patreon.com/Graveyard Tales and sign up to become a patron. You can sign up for 3 different levels that we've got, $1, $5, or $10. Our $10 a month, they get the side quest episode. So it's our second show that we've been putting out. And I know I can speak for both of us when I say we are having a blast with these side quest episodes, and people have been enjoying listening to side quest.
Oh yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's not like Graveyard Tales at all, really. Other than It's got us. Mm-hmm. But it is a lot of fun, and we do cut up. It is a little more blue than what we normally do, but go check it out. We really think you're going to dig it, and we're having a blast. And I don't know that we may watch, reaction videos one week. We may be, talking about something bizarre that happened in our lives the next. Mm-hmm. So you never know.
Yep. Never know. It's just kind of a catch-all for the stuff that Matt and I want to talk about, and we can't on Graveyard Tales. So check it out. Also, all of our levels get a bonus episode a week, and our $5 and $10 get a ad-free audio and video version of the show if we have an ad that week. So, Matt, that's all the housekeeping I got. So why don't you tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother?
So tonight we're going to talk about a haunted place that we've discussed briefly in the past when we talked about Savannah, Georgia as a whole. Okay. And we touched on a bunch of different places, but we didn't do a really deep dive on any of them.
Right.
So tonight we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on what is considered to be not just the most haunted place in Savannah, but a lot of people will say it's so active it could be considered maybe the most haunted house in the United States.
It's wild.
And it does have a lot of activity. I mean, I was really surprised. But we're going to talk about the Sorrel Weed House in Savannah, Georgia. If you are into haunted places, okay, if this is something you'd like to read about, look up, you listen to shows, you obviously are listening to this, you have probably heard of this place multiple times.
Yeah.
It take the haunted history out of it. It is, it's an amazing place. I mean, the whole city of Savannah is just incredible as it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, just having this building is fantastic enough, but you start adding in all the paranormal experiences that people have had there, that now it really gets fascinating.
Right. So, as we always say, go check our sources. Down at the bottom of the show notes, you can find where we found the information. There's firsthand accounts from people who have actually been there. Matt and I have not gotten to go there yet. It's on our bucket list of places to go for sure.
I've not been to Savannah. The rest of my family has.
Yeah.
But I've not.
Yep. I haven't either. And it's actually a place that Ashley wants to go too. So I figure we could get there eventually. But yeah, if you want to do some more deep dive into the Sorrel Weed House that we didn't cover on the show, down there in our show notes, very bottom, that's the sources where we found the information. And got to give credit to the people who have gone to the Sorrel Weed House and who have done this firsthand research. Now, the Sorrel Weed House is a historic landmark, and it's near Madison Square in Savannah, Georgia. So Savannah has a Madison Square too. I don't know if you knew that before.
I wonder if they have a garden.
I bet you they do. But
that's a terrible joke.
It was, but I like it. Now, in 1840, there was a shipping merchant named Francis Sorrel. So he was born in 1793. He had a house that we now know as the Sorrel Weed House built for himself. Now, the structure was designed by an Irish-born architect named Charles B. Kluski, and it's what people consider an excellent example of Regency architecture because of the perfectly symmetrical layout and like the Greek revival elements that it has. So it's a pretty house to look at. If you've ever seen pictures of it, it is a really cool looking house. Now, in 1835, the 16,000 square foot project, think about that, 16,000 square foot, Matt. That's
pretty big.
Pretty wild. It was initiated and it took about 5 years to complete. So when it was finished, Sorrel had spent a total of $12,000 on this house. Now, granted, this is, 1840. So you think $12,000, I would love to spend, no, $12,000 nowadays would be probably close to $1 million if you were to do the conversion rate. I should have done the conversion rate for this just to see, but I meant to, and then I didn't. So do the conversion rate, 1840, $12,000, what it is today. Figure it out. Now, Mr. Sorrel was half Haitian and half French, and he grew up in Saint Domingue, which is now known as Haiti. So he is from Haiti, and he traveled to North America and ended up becoming one of the wealthiest men in Savannah. So Francis Sorrel's father, Antoine Francois Sorrel de Rivieres, was a French colonel sent to Haiti to map the colony. While Francis's mother, Eugenie de Sutter, was believed to be a free black woman who died shortly after giving birth. Now, while he was an infant, Francis lived with his father in his sugarcane plantation. So his mother was a Haitian slave who was freed and then ended up getting with his father, who was French. So that's where the half French, half Haitian comes from. Now, young Sorrel had been born during a tumultuous time on the island because it was during the Haitian Revolution. So his father would regularly travel during this revolution until one day he never returned. So he'd go out of town for business, we'll say. He was a colonel, so who knows what his business was. But he would regularly travel and leave Haiti, and he would leave young Francis with the slaves on his plantation. Well, one day when he did this, he didn't return. So it left Francis in the care of his father's slaves. Now, it was believed that Sorrel Sr. actually abandoned Francis because he was a constant reminder of the affair that he had had with Francis's mother. So nobody knows exactly why Sorrel Sr. didn't show back up, but that's the assumption. Now, sometime during his father's absence, the plantation was targeted by revolting slaves who sought to murder every colonist and set fire to their property. So one of the enslaved caretakers of Francis, who was 5 years old at this time, actually took pity on Francis, and they hid him from the enemy forces that were coming in. Because they're like, this kid's 5 years old. He has nothing to do with any of this, and we've been taking care of him his whole life. So they saved him from the revolution that was coming in to burn and kill the colonists that were there. Mm-hmm. Well, that slave then took Francis to Port-au-Prince, where he was taken in by the caretaker's relatives. So it says, quote, "This incredible act of kindness saved the young boy's life." So Sorrel worked as a merchant clerk in Port-au-Prince, and after several years of working his butt off, the company transferred him to their Baltimore, Maryland office. So he's in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. He worked there for many years, and then they said, "You're doing such a good job, we're going to transfer you over to Baltimore, Maryland." Now, while at the Baltimore office, Sorrel and his supervisor, Henry Douglas, started talking, and they started drafting plans for a shipping company that they wanted to start in Savannah. So working for one company, and he and his boss are like, we can do this better, and we can do it in Savannah. So they eventually moved down to Savannah, and the Douglas and Sorrel Company was open for business shortly after that. Now, the company imported a ton of different goods, like butter, salt, molasses, cotton, and other goods. But unfortunately, even after his early life experiences, the Douglas and Sorrel Company also imported slaves. So
yeah. This time in history, we're talking about the southern U.S. Everybody's like, oh, the thing about it is that was the way business was done. It didn't make it right, okay? But so many of these, so much of the industry was reliant on slave labor. And, the way these people got rich is they didn't have to pay their workers, for this stuff.
Right.
So I know it's Adam and I, we try to avoid topics like this, but as bad as it is, history's history.
Right.
And it definitely plays into why the Sorrel Weed House would be as haunted as it is.
Right. Exactly.
Okay? I mean, the history that you'll see or you'll hear tonight, it will, as uncomfortable as it may be to think, golly, these people were truly, they were awful, to own another person. You're gonna understand why we have to talk about it, because it directly impacts the energy and the haunting that occurs there now.
Right, exactly. Now, even after the Douglas and Sorrel Company amicably split, I can never say amicably. So,
it's one of those crazy words that, when you have a Southern accent.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Some words just become like tripping points.
Yeah, and like, that's one of them.
Crap. Yeah.
So I normally don't say amicably. I normally say they split on good terms.
That's right.
So let me try that again for you people. After the Douglas and Sorrel Company split on good terms, Sorrel still ended up profiting off the slave trade. So even after that company dissolved and they weren't importing slaves, he was still making money off the slave trade. Well, after several years of successful business in Savannah, Francis Sorrel commissioned the construction of the estate we know today as the Sorrel Weed House. The home actually flaunted Sorrel's wealth and provided space to store the slaves that he traded. So again, this is why it's going to come into the hauntings and why this place is haunted and the reason we're talking about it. Now, Francis and his family lived in this home for roughly 2 decades until 1859, when he decided to sell the property and move into the adjacent house on 12 West Harris Street. The home was then purchased by Henry D. Weed, a wealthy businessman and landowner from Connecticut, and it remained in the Weed family until 1914. Now, the house was then subsequently vacant until 1940, and then they opened it to the public by the Society for the Preservation of Savannah Landmarks, which is now the Historic Savannah Foundation. Well, several years later, in 1954, the building was declared a state landmark because of its historical value and because of the grandeur and, it was an opulent house. Mm-hmm. So,
and how do houses like that wind up vacant?
Yeah.
For, decades. I don't understand.
The only thing I can think of is that because of the historical significance, whoever's selling it is wanting too much. And everybody's like, I ain't paying for that. There's no way I'm paying that much money for that old a house. And everybody, if I'm going to pay that much money, I want a new house. So nobody, will pay for it. And then it sits vacant for 40 years, which is how you end up with stories as a kid of, don't go over there to Mr. Sorrel's house. That's the haunted house on the block.
Yeah, true enough. I was just thinking the timeline doesn't even, I guess, when the Great Depression actually ended, that's when somebody picked up and said, hey, we need to do something about this big empty house.
Right.
And, even then, nobody was running around with the cash to buy it, but they knew we need to save it, whatever reason. It's significant.
Right.
We need to hang on to it.
Right. Now, one of the most interesting things I found about the Sorrel Weed House that, while doing this research, that is going to, to me, it explains more of why a house like this would be haunted.
Yeah.
Is because it sits in the same spot where the British built a fort in preparation for the 1779 siege of Savannah. And this battle was one of the most gruesome in the Revolutionary War. So the history of the land it sits on is quite dang bloody.
Yeah. Didn't they call this like the bloodiest hour of the American Revolution?
Something like that,
The bloodiest hour.
Yeah.
They're timing it out. You don't usually hear about a battle or anything taking an hour.
Yeah.
But and of course the siege went a lot longer, and we didn't come out on top in that one.
Right. Yep.
British was said, we're still here.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Joint American and French forces actually attempted to push the British out of Savannah because the British had taken the city just a year earlier. Well, the Revolutionary Army was both outmanned and outgunned. Bodies were piling up fast in this battle. And if you think about the way infantry and stuff worked back then, you just had lines of dudes shooting and getting shot at. And so you could drop a ton of people. If you were quick to reload, you could drop a ton of people just as they were walking towards you. Now, the revolutionaries dug a trench at Madison Square to bury their dead. So hundreds of soldiers died in the span of a few weeks there. Now, in the heat of battle, the dead and injured couldn't be differentiated. So sick and injured soldiers were thrown into the pit with the dead and were often buried alive.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine? You get shot and you're thinking, if somebody will get to me, I'll just survive. I'm fine. And then Jim Bob and Bocephus throw your ass into this pile of dead bodies and leave you because they thought you were dead, and you end up dying in this mass grave. Now, after the battle, the bodies were never exhumed. So the city continued to expand around the old battlefield, and Madison Square and the surrounding areas were built in the 1830s, 50 years after the war. So many of the buildings, including the Sorrel Weed House, are built over the remains of the dead soldiers.
Yep. You want a haunted city? Mm-hmm. This is how you get a haunted city.
This is how you do it. So think about that when you're listening to the stories from tonight, and when you go back and listen to our Savannah, Georgia episode. This explains a lot. It really does. Now, the Sorrel Weed House was also the childhood home of Confederate General Moxley Sorrel, and it was frequently visited by the Confederate General Robert E. Lee, who was actually a close family friend. Now, Francis Sorrel, he married Lucinda Moxley soon after he arrived into the United States. Well, Lucinda was from a wealthy family who did business with Francis. Well, unfortunately, just a few years after they got married, Lucinda passed away. So Francis, as we know from his history, was just a really nice feller, right? and I say that with as much sarcasm as I can muster.
Tongue planted firmly in cheek.
Firmly in cheek. Well, he ended up marrying Lucinda's younger sister, Matilda. So if you want your ex-wife to haunt you, marry her younger sister.
Yeah, but this was more. This was a practice at one. I don't think it was a practice in this time,
right?
But historically, we would, we know of stories where this was the tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Same way, if the husband passes away, the widow would marry the husband's brother,
right?
Something like that. And it was a way to kind of ensure that, the widow was always taken care of and wasn't alone, where people could take advantage of her, that kind of stuff.
Kept the families bonded.
Yeah, exactly. I don't.
Still doesn't make it less creepy, but.
Right. When you flip it, it sounds gross,
Because at one point,
about the husband marrying the sister,
right? Because at one point, that was his sister-in-law.
That's right.
So it's like marrying your sister, and that we know that happened too in history. And
that's true.
Thank God that's not a practice anymore that we know of. Now, Matilda and Francis had what everyone said was a happy marriage for years. But Francis had his vices, as you know from him being such a nice feller and all.
That's right, yeah. He just had a bunch of them mounted on tables. He would just crank them down. He loved putting
he had
stuff in vices.
A wood vice, a metal vice. He had everything. Well, eventually, Francis began having an affair with one of his slaves named Molly. Now, Francis wanted to make it easier for him to have this affair and to keep it private because, why make it difficult on himself?
Exactly.
He wanted to cheat easily.
Make it as easy as possible.
Yeah. Let's make this affair super easy for me. So what he did was he gave Molly her own room in the house. So it worked out for a little while. But Matilda eventually found out about this affair.
Yeah, because you're right there in the same dang house.
Yeah. I don't know why he thought that would be helpful in keeping it a secret.
Right. All that did is made it convenient.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how in the heck that would make it easy to keep the secret.
Not more covert, because you like leave your marriage bedroom.
Yeah.
And you get up and walk down the hall. I'm going to the bathroom. And you go right next door to the room next door.
Yes.
I got lost on the way to the bathroom, babe. I'm sorry. Just crazy.
I like the bathroom in Molly's room better.
Yeah, it's softer, seating and stuff.
But wait a minute.
The water's hotter.
We say this, we're being facetious. We know that they didn't have indoor bathrooms.
Right. Hey, that's as facetious as me calling him a nice feller. So
that's right.
Now, when Matilda found out, she was obviously livid and she was distraught. So Matilda committed suicide by jumping off the second floor balcony.
Yeah.
She landed on the concrete courtyard head first and cracked her skull wide open.
Yeah.
And after this, Molly was struck with guilt over Matilda's death, but she also knew that because she was a slave, she would be held liable for both the affair and Matilda's death.
Uh-huh.
She knew it wasn't going to be Frances that got in trouble. She knew it was going to be her. So not long after this, Molly was found hanging by a noose where she had committed suicide as well.
When I was looking, when I was doing my research, I actually found a site that I was kind of nervous because it was like, do I really want to read all this? Because the title of it was "Let the Debunking Begin." And I was like, this is not going to be fun, but I better look at it and make sure I'm not saying something that's been just completely, debunked. But it wasn't that way. In fact, most of it was, this is true. We think this is true, but we don't have any documentation of it, blah, blah, blah. One of the things that they brought up that I didn't really feel debunked anything was that when Matilda jumped off that second floor balcony, they say I don't know that they prove this, but most likely she jumped from the second floor of the house on 12 West Harris.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. That house was next door, and she landed in the courtyard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which adjoined, the Sorrel Weed House. Plus, she was connected to that house by family regardless.
Right.
So the fact that her ghost would necessarily be in the Sorrel Weed House and not at 12 West Harris Street, that's, it's, to me, that's 6 one, half a dozen the other.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
She had a connection to both houses and she died right between them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think her ghost is, up for a geography lesson.
Right. Or paying attention to property lines, really.
Exactly. And we've talked about that before. That's why we think you see spirits give this impression that they're walking through a wall, because when they were around, there was no wall there.
Right.
Or they seem to float across because there was a staircase here at one time and it's been torn down or renovated or whatever. So it doesn't necessarily coincide with all the new updates that, would occur at a house over a century. And so you don't necessarily, your ghost isn't necessarily tied to an address.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But that it was interesting, when I found it. So I figured, well, let's bring it up. I'm not gonna smash Adam's fact. I think it was to me, it was just that. It was interesting. It didn't really debunk anything. But as I said, Matilda's ghost and Molly's ghost still haunt the Sorrel Weed House.
That's to be expected.
Yeah, you would think. So visitors that have come through over the years have seen dark silhouettes walking through the halls. And some have even captured photos of these spirits. Others will say that they have seen the reflection of female apparitions in the mirror without the physical bodies to accompany them. This is a common thing at the Sorrel Weed House. The mirrors come up frequently when we're talking about hauntings. In fact, if you go back and listen to our Savannah episode, I tell a story about a visitor that went to was on the tour, took a photograph of the big mirror in the dining room.
Yeah.
And was looking at them as she took them, but nothing really stood out to her then. And it was the next morning, she said she's flipping through and she realized one of the photos looked like an overexposed photo, which you don't usually get when you're taking it on a smartphone.
Right.
Or even a digital camera. You don't get that overexposed shot. But one of them did have that appearance. But one of the photos next to that, if you look at all the tour members that are standing in front of this mirror trying to capture pictures of it, in one of the photos, there's another guy. Just standing there in the background, right up there like, hey, I'm part of this tour. And in the very next one, he's not there.
Yeah.
And now you see the ghosts of Molly and Matilda, or at least what they think is Molly and Matilda, female spirits reflected in the mirror, even though there's not, there's nothing standing in front of the mirror to cast that reflection. So it's an interesting thing. It's funny
that would
how
be creepy.
Different houses have different nuances to the hauntings that they have.
Right.
And I know a lot of people will chalk that up to, well, yeah, it makes for a better story. Well, maybe. Okay. But when you start hearing things like this over and over and over and over, you're like, this is kind of unique to this particular haunting. You can't explain it. And, now some of the folks even have photographic evidence, of something weird going on.
Right.
Now, the ghost of Molly is said to haunt the slave quarters. So this businessman decided that he was going to rent this space and use it as an office. And at the time, he was unaware of the history of Molly and Matilda's untimely deaths in the house. He said he claimed that he constantly felt this sense of unease. He says it was almost like he was being watched all the time. He said other people that would come into that room would say they started feeling sick or even sleepy. Now, there were others that said they felt like they were being strangled by a rope.
Jeez.
Yeah, think about that.
I don't want
to. Well, yeah. I mean, that would suck. I don't want to be strangled ever. No. Not even in a fun way. But how do you tell? I guess you could if you had enough sensation of something choking you that you could tell whether it would be somebody's hands around your throat or a rope.
Yeah.
So that they do specify that they feel like they're being strangled by a rope. Which it would be a callback to Molly's suicide. I really hope nobody feels like they fell out of a second-story window and cracked their skull on the pavement.
Can you imagine?
Would be a crappy thing. Oh, come out. My head hurt. I feel like I fell off the second story and cracked my skull. Oh, that's how Matilda died.
That would be bad.
Now, other people claim to hear the sounds of a social gathering in the living room of the house. And this one is a very common report. The sounds suddenly stop whenever someone approaches. But the source of the sound has yet to be found. So they have not been able to tag it to, okay, there's, the way this house is and it's connected to this and that. You can pick up, a radio station or, you hear echoes of a party down the road or something. They've never been able to figure that out. Okay, it's commonly reported, but they just haven't been able to debunk it and say, "Oh, well, that's this." They don't know where the sound comes from. But some people believe that this would be like a residual haunting of the many parties that were thrown inside that house. Because they were very social people. I mean, they were wealthy. They were well known in the business world. So throwing parties and having some, high rollers, come around, the who's who of Savannah, would visit there. So this was a frequent occurrence. So a lot of people believe you're just catching the sound of one of these parties.
Like a stone tape thing.
Exactly. Now, other people say that they feel this dark psychic energy as soon as they enter the house. The dark energy is said to stem from the bodies buried from the siege of Savannah, because a similar aura seems to hang over all of Madison Square.
Yeah. And dude, I had to say, if you were in the least bit sensitive to stuff like that, that has to be one of the most oppressive places to be, is where a mass grave was from the Revolutionary War. Especially considering there were people thrown in there alive and buried alive. I can't imagine what, like, some of our buddies who are psychics, mediums, what they would feel going into places like this.
It would be really, really odd to catch that much negative energy all at once.
Yeah.
But imagine if you were like, the kid in The Sixth Sense.
Oh yeah.
All these ghosts are coming out, trying to get you to help them. I mean, if you imagine, if you could see that, Savannah is probably just covered up. Madison Square, it just looks like there's a crowd all the time. Just these ghosts wandering around. They figure out you could see or hear them. God. Now they're just chasing you around, trying to get your attention. Hey, excuse me, pardon me, hello.
Getting followed by a flash mob the whole time.
You looks like a damn Thriller video.
That would be awful.
Now, other people that have reported this dark feeling say that it's accompanied by the sounds of warfare, but battles, gunfire, cannon fire, shouts and screams and so forth.
Yeah.
And they say you can really hear it on a quiet night. So it's not something that's just really, really loud. But when I read that, I thought, okay, well, you can hear a lot of crazy stuff when it's quiet outside.
That's true.
But as far as the Sorrel Weed House goes, the basement seems to be where this dark energy emanates.
Well, I mean, technically, you're in the ground at that point.
Yeah.
You're in the same dirt that these bodies were in.
Right.
So I mean, you hear that from a lot of places. Oh, it's the basement. The basement's always a haunt. But this is one of the times that I can say, I can see why.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Here's another reason why. The basement is often referred to by tour guides as the surgery room.
Oh, geez.
And this is because Francis Sorrel's son, Frank, was a physician. And he would use the basement as a trauma surgery unit,
Lord.
From time to time. So people that go into the basement report many different experiences, including the sensation of being touched. Shadows are also seen frequently. And that feeling again, that just unexplainable, I don't like this kind of feeling. Some have even reported seeing a little girl who, I don't know how they figure this out, likes to play hide and seek. So I guess they see her and then she goes away. They see her again, she goes away. So she appears to be very playful.
Yeah, how do they know she's wanting to play hide and seek and not just hiding?
Yeah, that's why I was like, how do you figure that out? But there is a chair that is down there, and the chair apparently moves of its own accord.
Yeah.
You know, so just this particular chair, it moves around quite a bit. Now, on top of all of that, historians believe that a British barracks once stood on the property that is now the Sorrel Weed House. And according to documents, a cannonball came through this barracks, killing 12 British soldiers during the siege of Savannah. So people have reported seeing apparitions of British soldiers in one specific area in the basement. Okay. This basement is freaking huge, apparently. So people think, could this be the source of the dark energy? You know, these dead soldiers being right there. You know, we've talked about how much paranormal sludge war will leave behind. Yep. So I think that's a reasonable hypothesis for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, there's also this little small breezeway in the basement, and there is a chair in the breezeway where visitors are encouraged to sit and wait to be visited by this strange shadow figure.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Just sit here and wait.
Yeah, just
Why?
wait.
What's going to happen? You'll see.
Yeah, you'll get accosted by a shadow figure, but it's okay. You'll enjoy it.
One person that tried it says that they felt, quote, every possible emotion at the same time. And then they ran out of the house.
Like, yeah, I think I would too.
What would that feel like?
Yeah, no joke.
Every emotion.
I don't think I have experienced every emotion, period, in my lifetime.
Well, I mean, you know, I know what it's like to be like, you know, kind of happy, kind of sad at the same time, you know, the bittersweet feeling, you know, this is good and this is not, but it all works out, you know. But every emotion, like,
right.
I feel happy and excited and terrified.
Aroused.
Aroused.
That's a feeling too, Matt.
Is that an emotion though?
Hey, probably.
It could be.
For dudes, probably not, but for ladies who are more sensitive, I think.
That's the men. Men have the RAF, the resting aroused face.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you smell very nice today.
Yeah.
You know, and that's gonna live with that guy for the next 5 years. You know.
Oh yeah.
Remember that woman we smelled down in the Sorrel Weed House? That was a ghost, you idiot.
I don't care. She smelled good.
Yeah, she smelled good. I don't know if I'd sit in this chair. No.
Especially knowing that you feel every emotion all at once and one of those would be aroused. I don't want to sit there.
Yeah. The way my brain works is if you sat me down there in the dark and you said, okay, we're going to wait because people say that if you sit here for a while, you'll get visited by the shadow. Man, every damn shadow in Savannah would come see me.
Yeah.
And my head would just be spinning them around. You know, I'm like, will y'all please, you know, form a single file line for Christ's sakes.
Yeah, right. I can't talk all at once. Let's do this one at a time.
That's the way my head works. Now, just like a lot of haunted locations, Sorrel Weed House has a reputation for messing with electronics. Okay. Specifically, cell phone batteries and watches.
Watches?
Not necessarily a smartwatch. We're talking about just a regular watch with a regular watch battery going dead. And they blame it on this mysterious energy that just seems to suck power from, you know, watches and cell phones. And it didn't say necessarily in the house. It says in the vicinity. So you don't even got to go in. You know, if
And
you're
you
just
just be-
standing out front, you won't know what time it is because it drains your watch battery.
That's weird.
And visitors have reported starting the tour with a fully charged cell phone that ends up dying by the time the tour ends. And, you know, with the way modern cell phones are, I mean, you know, if you're taking a tour and maybe taking a few pictures and that sucker was fully charged, it's not going to be dead by the time you finish.
Yeah.
You know, an hour and a half tops. I mean,
Yeah, it
I
shouldn't
can
be.
talk on my phone for an hour and a half and it wouldn't go dead.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the original owner, Francis Sorrel, Francis, see, I told you I would say it multiple ways. Original owner Francis Sorrel is believed to have stuck around to keep an eye on his house after he died. There are odd occurrences in the dining room that are often attributed to him. Mainly, there is a chair at the dining room table that has reported to pull away or push itself back up without anyone touching it, as if someone was pulling it out to sit down for a meal and then standing up and pushing it back in when they were done.
Interesting.
In one case, a candlestick rose from the table and flew across the room as if it had been thrown. But here's the weird thing. The reports I saw said that the dining room is not often offered on the tour. I mean, I'm assuming they have toured in there before.
Yeah.
And they may be touring in there now, but it's not necessarily always a part of the tour, which seems weird because it seems like a very active room.
Yeah. I wonder why they don't.
I don't know. And I didn't see any reason as to why it wasn't. I looked on their website, but in at least one or two of the investigations that I watched, they made comments that at whatever time the upstairs was off limits because it was dangerous. And I'm going to talk more about that here in a minute. So, like I said, paranormal investigations abound in this place. All the major TV shows have been there, and just a laundry list of amateur or semi-professional paranormal investigation groups have been in and out of the Sorrel Weed House.
Yeah.
Now, Shane and Ryan from BuzzFeed Unsolved spent a night alone in the house. See, you thought I was going to do something from Ghost Adventures. No. We get somebody new in the mix.
Pulling a fast one on you.
This one was pretty good. And, you know, I do think because they're BuzzFeed, that, you know, there is a comedy aspect to what they're doing.
Sure.
But this one was really cool. It's not too long, so, you know, go check it out. But Sean and Ryan spend the night alone in the house, and they caught some really weird sounds on their video. They reported hearing footsteps on the on the floor above them. Now, they had been told that they couldn't go upstairs because, as Ryan says, we'll fall right through the floor. So there was some structural integrity issues, you know, with a building that old, to the point that they weren't letting them just go wander around upstairs. Maybe you can if you have a tour guide that knows exactly where you can and cannot go.
Yeah, where you can step.
At least for this, they couldn't go upstairs. So they wanted to go investigate. One of them damn Japanese beetles just walked right in front of the camera.
I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to tell you, but it's happened 2 or 3 times. Yep. Jeez. It's happened 2 or 3 times tonight. You've had a little friend come across the bottom of your camera and then back across.
So, they couldn't go upstairs and get the footsteps. But here's what I thought was so cool about it. Is you can hear the footsteps on the video.
Oh, really?
Which a lot of times when you're watching these shows, you don't hear what they hear.
Right.
It's not loud enough for the mics, even really high-end sensitive mics, to pick up.
Yep, that's true.
But these guys are essentially there with GoPros strapped to their chest, okay? And along with, handheld jobs and flashlights, you really wouldn't think that it would pick it up, but it does.
That's cool.
And they kept saying footsteps. A lot of it sounds like a knocking, but it does have a rhythm to it that makes you think, okay, it's probably footsteps, hard shoes kind of sound. So they go to the base of the stairs that they can't go up. And they start kind of hollering up, hello, is somebody up there? And at one point, they actually thought somebody's up there trying to mess with us.
Yeah.
There is absolutely somebody up there. And then they hear a dog bark. And so then they're like, oh, a dog's getting up. So now they're trying to get the dog to come down. And nobody came down.
So they're standing there. Come here, puppy. Come here, puppy.
Yeah, right.
Jeez.
Now, as they're down at the bottom of the steps, you can hear a few more of these loud knocks. And then you hear a voice. Now, you can't make out what the voice is saying, but it is definitely a voice inside a building that they're supposed to be in by themselves, completely alone. And you know how you can kind of catch stuff on these shows where you go, they're messing with you.
Mm-hmm.
When that voice comes out, Ryan looks over at Shane and goes, did you hear that? Like Shane's always the one that's trying to debunk everything.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I'm not afraid. Their ghosts aren't real. And they hear that voice and you just see it. Their faces like, we did not expect that. And it's like, so did you hear that?
That's funny.
I thought it was great. I mean, you could, if you could feel goosebumps through a video, you could feel Ryan's at that point.
That's funny.
That got him. But man, I mean, you can go and you can watch so many of these. And you can see some of the photos, like I mentioned earlier, and that you can hear more details in our episode on Savannah, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I watched about half a dozen. Some were a little bit better than others. Some were a little bit more professional. But they all managed to capture something, even if it was just minor.
Yeah.
They all managed to come away with something that made them excited that they had gathered up some type of evidence.
And that's great because, I mean, as well as I do, there's a lot of places that you can go and you're like, okay, I've only got one night that I can do this, and you get nothing. But you hear stuff and you're like, was that something? What was it? What? You don't actually hear or see something that you can go, yeah, that was unexplained.
Yeah. So
the fact that everything you saw had somebody catching something or hearing something, that's great.
Yeah, it's really, really cool to see that for a lot of reasons. And for me, less so of the evidence itself, but more so that this stimulates people wanting to go and find out more.
Right.
They want to come back. These investigators want to visit again. They want to see if they can get more. And I think it's not going to be our old buddy Zach Bagans. Okay. It's not going to be Jason and Grant. It's not going to be these famous ghost hunters that get the quote unquote proof in anywhere.
Right.
It's folks just like you and me and Adam and, all of our listeners, our buddy Rob, who's been with us from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's these people that just go, in my spare time, I hunt ghosts.
Yeah. And
these folks are going to be the ones that find what would be considered concrete evidence of, a spiritual afterlife right here, whether it's an intelligent haunting, whether it's a residual haunting, it doesn't matter. These are the people that are going to find it because they're the ones that are going, this was unbelievably cool. They're not trying to fake anything for the camera. They're not trying to sell advertising. They're
Right.
not trying to boost ratings. They are just out there for the love of doing it.
And they don't have the ulterior motives that someone would say, oh no, that's not legit, because you are on a TV show and you had, like we've said before, you have to make it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So of course you found something or heard something.
And, it's just like when you and I went to the Thomas house. There were a bunch of people there, to the point that we thought, we're not going to catch anything. There's too many people here.
Right. Right.
It's going to be drowned out by all the movement and activity.
I was convinced that's what was going to happen. Yeah.
But yet we did have some type of experience there.
Mm-hmm.
More than one.
Yep.
So just because you think, I ain't gonna fool with no ghost tours, it's just gonna be silly and everything. Open up your mind and say, I want to learn about the history. I want to hear about what other people have experienced. And in that process, you may be surprised because
the most concrete thing that's happened to me that I can say was paranormal, or the most personal thing, happened on a ghost tour.
Yeah.
It was when my shirt got pulled.
Mm-hmm.
That was a ghost tour with a bunch of people standing up in front of me. I was at the back, and they were talking about the Jefferson Hotel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't just think, because now it's happened twice at the Thomas house and the Jefferson, where we've had a bunch of people there and still able to experience something.
Exactly. So all of you guys, all of you members of the graveyard that are out there, you're taking extra money to make these trips to places and to buy equipment to help you do it. It's a passion. Keep it up, because you guys are going to be the ones that find that video, that capture that audio, that just convinces all the skeptics in the world of, boy, I really don't. This is maybe it.
You finally unlock that door.
The proof we've been looking for all these, I'm going to say decades, because I don't think ghost hunting became a popular thing until, till at least my generation.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody in the 1920s was necessarily hunting ghosts. They were into spiritualism. They were too busy trying to talk to them.
Right. To bring them to them.
Hey, we think we've got a ghost in the attic. Come over and let's do cocaine about it.
Yeah, exactly. Turns into the first Beetlejuice, where they're
yeah. Hey, I just had dental surgery. I've got plenty. Come on.
Right.
But I know we've got some listeners, because we had some responses when we talked about Savannah the last time.
Yeah.
I would love to hear if you've had the tour at the Sorrel Weed House, if you've had any experience, even if it was just, I felt that dark energy. I felt that just heaviness when I walked in the door. We'd love to hear it. And the best place to tell us about those is in our Facebook group. It is called The Graveyard. Thousands of people in there, just sharing some really great stories. Nobody's going to make fun of you. It's a private group, so you don't have to worry about your buddy at work going, yeah, I saw you in the graveyard talking about your ghosts. Nah, you don't have to worry about that. It's private. We just want to hear those really good stories.
Yep.
And after that, you can go check out our website, which is graveyardpodcast.com. And on our site, we have links to purchase Graveyard Tales merchandise, the posters, the coffee mugs, all the stuff that, you've seen us have over the years. That's where you can get it. And if you've got a graveyard member on your Christmas list, hey, now is a great time to jump in there and find them that T-shirt or hoodie, to get them that travel mug, whatever. And you've got 2 or 3. I think we've got 3 different logos on there now.
Going to try to get some more in there.
We've got a few more in the works. So go out there and check it out.
And they're always doing sales too. So check back.
Always finding stuff, 15% off, 25% off, go in there, buy one shirt, get another one half off, stuff like that. So go check it out. And for all the people that donate to the show through our Patreon, we sincerely appreciate it because it is really keeping us going. You've gotten us, you've helped us weather the storm of, the sponsors kind of backing out of independent podcasts and so forth. All that seems to be picking back up right now, but we were able to keep going because of you guys. And as Adam said at the top of the show, now for our $10 folks, you get to listen to Side Quest, which is a whole new show, whole new adventure for Adam and I. It is a side quest. Right. If you're a video gamer, then you know what we're talking about. But on our website, graveyardpodcast.com, that's where you can sign up to become a patron.
Right.
All right, Adam. Until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.